You're listening to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast. I'm your host, Nadine Bozeman. In this podcast, I'm sharing business systems and strategies specifically tailored to the bridal sewing industry so you can build your own modern and profitable bridal alterations business. Join me as I also get to chat with fellow seamstresses and share their personal success stories. I'm so glad you're here and that we can grow together in this unique trade. Hey friends, before we get into another episode, I wanted to share with you about a free private podcast series that we have available for you, all about the subject of branded fitting packages. So if you have ever considered charging for fittings or maybe adding a little bit of additional passive income to your average ticket, this would be a great free podcast series for you to explore. It also includes testimonials of bridal seamstresses who have added branded fitting packages to their own portfolio, and they share about their additional income that they've seen in the years since adding fitting packages. And we're talking about like $15,000 to $20,000 in revenue. So it's a big chunk of change. And I can confidently say that every bridal seamstress that has added branded fitting packages to their portfolio has seen this kind of exponential growth and benefit to their business. So I encourage you to sign up for that free podcast series, and it will hit your inbox as soon as you sign up. And you'll have all the tools that you need to create your own fitting packages and also put together a beautiful investment guide to share these services with your potential clients. So that link is in the show notes if you're interested in tuning in. And I'm really excited to learn what this could do for your business this year. Welcome back to another episode of Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress. I am here with Kelly McCracken, and she's kind of become this like local celebrity within the SBS community because she's making the rounds, taking care of our Dubsado accounts. And so I'm next on the docket. I'm so excited. But she also is a skilled blog, how do you call it? Like a blog manager, a Pinterest manager. And she is really skilled at taking tasks off your plate and just taking care of them flawlessly. So Kelly, thank you so much for being here and for being like a wealth of knowledge for us wedding pros.
Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to share with listeners that it is possible to get help. And I think some of our listeners are at a point where it's like the business has been growing, they started off super scrappy, this is how I felt when I first started, we're doing everything ourselves, and then there's a point where it's like we literally cannot do everything ourselves, but how do we start to delegate? And I think more importantly, how do we find people that we can trust to do the things? Because like I've always done my own emails. That's what some people may be thinking, or like I've always done my own website setup, or like I don't want to give this work up. Why are we like obsessed with keeping our own work? I don't know, but we're entrepreneurs, so we're also controlling.
Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth?
So you are here to help us.
That is why I'm here. That's why I got started.
Yes. And before we started recording, Kelly and I were sharing our common bond or maybe our common trauma of being retired teachers. So tell us about how you got into like running your own business and eventually left the classroom. Did you do this at the same time as teaching, or was there like a break between teaching and then entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'll give you the whole
whole rundown.
The whole rundown. So I was a second grade teacher for 7 years. Like we were just chatting about teaching, it was always a very challenging profession, no matter what. But, of course, like a lot of people, 2020 rolls around and I'm like getting a taste of what it's like to work from my computer and have a little more flexibility in my life and not be like running around trying to plan meals every 5 minutes and then the Sunday scaries and all that. So it gave me the opportunity to be like, okay, what else can I do? What else do I want to do with my skills? So that's when I just started looking into virtual assisting and seeing what that was all about. I really love helping people and I really hate wasting time. So I was like, okay, I want to use some of these skills that I have and put them to good use. And I just sort of landed on the wedding world. I was planning a wedding at the time. So I was in the middle of all of the like COVID changes and cancellations and all of that.
Oh my goodness, you were a COVID bride.
Yes, I was a COVID bride. We ended up having 2 beautiful weddings, but like, still all of the stress that comes along with that. So I started then, got started with virtual assisting and I said, okay, what do you want help with? Tell me what I can do for you. And everyone started asking for the exact same things. They were wanting me to blog for them. All wedding
Mhm.
pros were like, please blog for me. What about Pinterest? What can I do with Pinterest? And then they were saying, I need Dubsado. And it was like the same three services again and again and again. So I was like, all
Mhm.
right, I'm just going to hone in on these three things. And I feel like it's sort of odd to explain to people all three services,
Right.
but I'm also like, for a wedding pro, it does make perfect sense. Those are the things that they really need the most help
Yes. That is so funny because I'm in a business mastermind and I'm thinking of other business owners. And as a wedding pro, I definitely have needs that they don't have. It just
with.
is like a completely different
Mhm,
clientele that I'm trying to reach. Like my
mhm.
vibe has to appeal to a certain kind of bride that I want to work with or a certain
Yes.
client that doesn't line up with who they're working with. So
Mhm.
I'm just so glad that you ended up in the wedding pool.
Me too. It's
Okay,
always
so
so
let's
fun.
if we can start with the magic word Dubsado because this has been like such a magic phrase that's been going around our community for a while. And if you're listening, there's an earlier podcast episode featuring Fran Miller where she talks about, I feel like she was kind of the pioneer in our industry where she first discovered Dubsado. I believe it was like the first year, like
Mhm.
they launched it. And she's
Yep.
like, and she was also a teacher. See,
Mhm.
have this bonds. She was like an administrator. This is like the Fran episode. And so she came on and she shared how, she discovered Dubsado and how helpful it's been. And I feel like since then, so many of us have kind of checked it out, but for some listeners, it's still kind of like this mystery. So can you explain what Dubsado is,
Mhm.
how it can help wedding pros, and then what you do, like how you come in to like literally save the day?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is confusing when you're just getting started, especially if you're like, I've been doing this all myself. I don't normally use a
Yep.
system. What does the system do for
hmm
me? I don't really
We
understand
are
how
we
it
are
can
really
help
good at DIYing.
me. Yeah.
Bridal seamstresses, we pride ourselves on like getting scrappy and figuring it out ourselves.
Exactly. Yes. So Dubsado is a CRM, which means client relationship management. So there are lots of different softwares out there. You'll hear Honeybook a lot when you're
hmm
talking about Dubsado, or you'll hear 17 Hats. There's a couple of different ones that are sort of wedding or like creative person
hmm
focused, I should say. Dubsado is sort of the one that I find to be the most robust with the most sort of automations and personalization that's available. So a lot of people will start out at Honeybook at first, and that there's a lot of people that use it on Honeybook too, and they really love it, and it's a great place to start. But I think when they're like, okay, I'm really leaning into automation, and what more can I do that I could take off my plate? Dubsado sort of seems to be the next step for people, or
hmm
to switch between one or the other. Again, all of that to say, none of them are right or wrong. It's just more of like, where are you at in the process, and what would you like to do with your
hmm
business? It's sort of finding the right fit. So the things that I love about Dubsado, or I help people with, is that there's the ability to add in all of your branding. So everything on the client facing side looks very cohesive with your website and
I
your
love that.
Instagram or social media. So clients most often don't time know that they're using a
Right.
software, which is awesome. The other thing I love is that it makes it really easy for them to just book and move forward with you. So they have the ability to book time on your calendar and get confirmations and emails. They have the ability to pay or select a package right from there, be taken to a contract, right to an invoice that's already set up at whatever terms that you want them to be set up as.
hmm
So let's say it was like a 50-50 payment, or like they had a deposit to make and then move forward with whatever their total was going to be. All
hmm
of that can be customized. So those are sort of my favorite features overall, but sort of why people lean into Dubsado.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you were saying before we hit record was that with working with bridal seamstresses, even though we do the same work, everyone that you've worked with has a different flow, which I think is so
Mhm,
interesting because we have our own way that we've been like manually like
mhm,
tracking like who contacts us, how we go through the forms, how we see the photos, do we
mhm.
give a quote beforehand? Like
Yep.
just our order is different. And so you can customize what your flow already is and just make
Mhm.
it like automated, which is really, really cool.
Yes, I love
I
it.
love
Yeah,
that.
there's so many similarities. Like I think in your membership, you have really focused on like creating packages that are profitable, and then being able to
Mhm.
then then get people on your calendar from there, where a lot of that was similar. But beyond that, it was really personalized to whatever they wanted it to be or however they
Mhm.
work with their clients, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, and I love that. And I also like, I guess, like the A-type personality within me. I really like everything looking the same so that it
Mhm.
doesn't look like, okay, I have this beautiful website and then here's like this like third party thing that I'm sending you to that looks
Yes.
nothing like my brand. Like the
Mhm.
cohesiveness is beautiful as well.
It really is. I think it really makes a difference in the client experience too, where they
Yeah.
just feel like, oh, like that's awesome. Like that was
Yeah.
so easy. They really care about how this looks and how
Hmm.
this feels for me. So I feel like it just puts across a really nice presentation.
Right, right. And we talk a lot about like how it's kind of like the behind the scenes, or maybe I should say the steps leading up to even the first fitting, like that goes into your ticket price. Like that goes into your
Mhm.
pricing. It's the whole experience that you're taking your client through, not just like when they walk in the door, but it's like,
Mhm.
what are they experiencing from you? It should feel the same, like
Mhm.
your social media posts, like your language and emails, your
Yes.
booking experience should all fit the same experience that you're trying to promote within fittings. So
Mhm.
I'm pumped. So
Yeah.
I was telling Kelly that I jumped on the Dubsado wagon. Well, it was like their Black Friday sale last year.
Mhm. Yep.
If you're listening and you're thinking about this, you can do it maybe like me. So I wanted to lock in this like sale price, and they run
Yeah.
sales, I feel like regularly. I'm not
Yes.
regularly, but
Twice
like
a year.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so I like, and I think I used your code.
Oh,
I
awesome.
think I was like
Well, you
following
get
you
a
and I'm
good
like, "Ooh,
discount.
Kelly's code."
Yes. It's on top of the sale pricing, which is amazing.
Yes. And I think so I registered for that and then like I tried to do it on my own and I felt super overwhelmed. So I put
Mhm.
it in the back burner and I realized, okay, if I can just like get through one more season doing my
Mhm.
normal routine and then I can have Dubsado set up and make everything automated for fall before like all the new
Yeah.
bookings come through.
Mhm.
So if you're listening and this sounds appealing to you, you can just grab Dubsado at the next sale and
Yeah.
then if you can obviously try to figure things out on your own, but
Mhm.
hiring somebody like Kelly to help with this, I think would
Yeah,
be super beneficial just to make
definitely.
it nice and cohesive.
Yeah, I always recommend doing that. I mean, they have a free trial, which is nice. It's not just like 2 weeks. You're allowed to use it for up to 3 clients, which really just means 3 email addresses can come
Hmm.
through, but it's never going to expire on you. So you can always just like play around and check it out. And it's not going to like delete anything or take anything away from you. And I think that speaks a lot to them as a
Right.
company, sure, that
Yeah.
they really want you to have the time to do it. But I would say too, I've seen people before where they try to DIY it and they are just like pulling their hair out because they're like, I don't have the time to sit down and learn this and write this and figure this out. It's
Yeah,
just, I
no.
need it to work. Right.
No.
So
And I
if
was really
you,
hopeful. I'm like, oh, I can figure this out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like
yeah,
I was borderline in tears. So it was a little rough.
yes,
So
I
can you
was in
tell us?
tears when I
Oh.
got started. So don't feel like you're alone.
Okay. So what things would Dubsado eliminate, like the actual tasks?
So when someone's inquiring with you, you're no longer like trying to get them into your email into a system. Like we want them to come right from your lead form into the system. So right there, you're probably saving 5 or 10 minutes of
Hmm.
transferring over to something else,
To some
whether it's
spreadsheet. Yep.
a Google Doc, sheet or whatever it is to not lose track of them. They can then get an auto response right away that says, hey, check out this awesome reel that I just created or something I just did for my recent client. So, you're sort of top of mind and you
Hmm.
remember that you inquired with that person. Then it gives you a chance to say, like, okay, do I want to work with this person? Am I available? What's the complexity of this dress that they have? And then you can say, okay, great, let's move forward. Here's how to book time on my calendar. So for you, that was a click of a button that
Hmm.
says, like, here's how to book and pay me to then get access to move forward. So
Hmm.
it makes it like super easy. Something I was thinking that you mentioned before was just really using that also as like your boundaries and your systems that say, like, here's when I work, here's how I do this. And people then know right from the start. There's no
Yep.
wishy-washy. We kind of explain that right from the start.
Hmm.
But yeah, so then you're not going to then transfer over like their contract information to then get that all set up because you already have their information in a system.
Hmm.
So really what you're focusing on is for a bridal seamstress would be like the quote of how much that's going to cost. That would of course be
Right.
custom, whatever it
Right.
is once you see them. But you already have your payment plan created, all their payment reminders, appointment reminders, all of that. So it really takes a lot of that off your plate so you can just focus on, sewing
Yeah,
and
yeah.
coding
Because I
them
was
correctly.
thinking through my own order, and I was like, the only thing that I would definitely want to obviously personally
Hmm.
attack would be their quote. But if that's literally the only email that I have to send or only
Right.
personal response, like that would be great. And then
Yeah.
also, like, because I know the first step for me is always sending them my investment guide and like what
Mhm.
to expect from fittings, and
Yep.
that kind of weeds out some people too. So it's
Yes.
like all
Yep.
of that's already automated and just done, saving one
Exactly.
more step. So I'm so excited. Okay, so I kind of want to switch gears here because in January we had our SBS retreat in Austin, and one of our speakers brought up blogging. And it was
Mhm.
so funny because it was Jessica Guzikowski, and she was talking about something totally different. I think just like marketing through social media,
Mhm.
and blogging was like she just kind of mentioned it, and then somebody had a question like, "Wait, did you say
Mhm.
blogging?" And then, it opened up this whole can of worms because blogging is not dead. And some
It is
people think
not.
that it is because it's like, well, who's really reading or whatever, but
Mhm.
blogging can be so beneficial. So I, of course, hopped on the bandwagon and I posted one blog post, with high hopes of posting like, okay, every Friday. And that did not happen, but
Yep.
it might happen in 2025. So we shall see. But tell us, like, how come blogging is not dead in 2024
Oh, it
with
it is
all of these
like
videos that are available now?
I know. And it is, I think it is part of the marketing, right? I don't think it's necessarily like the only marketing that you have to do.
Hmm.
But if you shift it to be like, okay, if I invest the time in this blog post, whether it takes 2, 3 hours, it's going to last for years, like years and years and years. People will still be able to find that. It's not like investing an hour in a reel or an Instagram post that like maybe someone might see after 24
Right.
or 48 hours. It's just a totally different sort of like change in mindset of like, what is my core content? Like, how are people finding me? What questions are they asking that I can answer for them? And then they say, oh, well, she already gave me all this great information. I see your website now and I want to work with you. So
Hmm.
it just sort of gives them that like trust and be able to honestly find you on Google, right? If you're just
Hmm.
answering the questions that people have.
Right. Just answering the questions that people have. Like, that's literally a blog post,
Yes,
going through every
it's
question.
so hard to do for yourself because you're like, I don't know, people don't have questions. Like, I don't have to say this. And then you're like, wait, they are Googling, what do I bring to my bridal seamstress appointment? Or like,
Yes. Yeah.
what undergarments are good for wedding dresses? Like things like
Hmm.
that, that you can just be like, here you go. Like, here's
Yeah.
the information that you need,
Yeah.
especially for people in your area.
So for listeners who are like, what's SEO? What is SEO? And how do blogs totally boost that?
So SEO stands for search engine optimization. So what that means is really just being like, hey Google, like this is what this page is all about. And I feel like I heard from someone I met at a conference recently. They were saying that they are like SEO experts, and they were saying people try to make this sound more complicated than it is, but it
Hmm.
really is not as intimidating as it sounds. It's really just being like, what keyword would I like to rank for, or what would I like people to find me for? And oftentimes we want to use location. So wherever you are, if it was in, Portland or Washington or wherever it is
Hmm.
that you want to target in that city area, sort of making some content around that. But then, like I said, also having some like educational posts that are just focused on like bridal seamstress or things that people are needing to answer
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Because you're just putting more words. It's kind of like when you're building your website and you want to include words that people are just going to, like you said,
Mhm.
search for when they're looking for bridal seamstress. When you write a blog, all of a sudden you have way more words. So obviously it just makes more sense that like more words going to be bringing in potential clients. So,
Right.
and
Yep.
in my mind, it sounds so fun and like so easy. And then it's like, oh, then April rolls around and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have time for this.
Yes. It's so true. I know. And that's why people are like, can you please just write this for me?
So how do I I want to kind of tap into the act of hiring somebody else to do
Mhm.
the work because
Yeah.
that's really intimidating. I think it's
Mhm.
intimidating, number one, financially. I mean, being
Mhm.
honest,
Yep.
we're like
Absolutely.
we're doing stuff ourselves. We're so used
Mhm.
to everything that we do brings
Mhm.
us money. So like
Yep.
the thought of like paying somebody else to do something that like, well, I could do it. I'm just gonna have to
Right.
stay up till like 1 a.m. to finish it. But I mean, I could do it. It's like it really does not compute for some people, and I was definitely in that boat for a long time where it was like,
Mhm.
"What? I can do this myself. I won't eat,
Yes,
but it's fine. Like I'll get it done.
exactly.
So the financial piece, and then also like how to trust somebody, like what are some things that we
Mhm,
should look for if we're like, do we hold interviews? Do we,
mhm,
looking for people who can speak our voice, who we can really
mhm.
trust with our work? Can you kind of walk us through that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really scary to hire someone in your business for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Especially when you're like in the newer phase. I feel like you start to get to a place where you're like, oh, okay, like I see how this is going to benefit me and I can see the growth from investing in this and I know that it's going to come back. But like you said, you have to really find that person that you gel with and that makes a good match with you
Mm-hmm.
that you trust. So a lot of times people turn to like Upwork or I forget the other name of the other one now. There's another site that when you Google like virtual assistant or blog writer that comes up and you're like, oh, awesome. This is like $25 and they'll write this blog for me. But then you're like, okay, am I really getting out of that
Can they
what I
spell?
want?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll find that all over the place that people can do it for 25 bucks and you're like, okay, great, awesome. And that's not really what blogging is all about, right? We want
Mm-hmm.
it to be like about you and your voice and your brand that you're portraying across. So I honestly find a lot of people on like Facebook or Instagram, even when you search like blog writer or like you said, blog manager, to find people that you can sort of interview and trust. But the things I would look out for is can they write in my voice? How are
Mm-hmm.
we choosing content to put out there? How is it being written? Where is it being written? All that stuff. I know with my clients, I will always write in their website, but I also have a backup copy always in a Google Doc or something elsewhere so
Mm-hmm.
that not only am I, kind of covered on both fronts that if it's something happened on your website, but also that if you want to give feedback or really say like, I don't use that word, I don't use exclamation points like that. I want to
Yeah.
use this or I want to swear, or, however you want to talk, like go
Yeah.
for it. It's about you. So it's really just like getting to know your voice and being
Mm-hmm.
consistent with all of that.
Yeah. And I think too, asking for like examples of their work, I think is appropriate
Yes.
too, and to see like what
Mhm.
other brands they've worked with, because I know like my current podcast editor and producer, she and I click so, hi Haley,
Yeah.
like we click so great. She knows the brand, she knows my voice, and I was
Mhm.
able to look at other brands that she's worked with, and
Mhm.
she's kind of like a chameleon. Like she'll kind of match whatever vibe the brand is already bringing to the table. She'll match that.
Exactly.
And also she's really excited about like the topic that we're talking
Yeah.
about. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So it's like, okay, that helps too. And she's excited to see
Mhm.
it grow just as much as I am. But I did interview, and I've had a couple VAs before
Mhm.
Haley. And so when it was time to move on to her, I just booked a few one-on-one
Mhm.
calls,
Mhm.
because you can really pick up vibes from people,
Yeah.
and not always. Like I'm sure
Mhm.
there are instances where you can kind of get into something where you're like, okay, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. Because I know how I would say it, but is it appropriate to say like, okay, let's do this for like 3 months and
Mhm.
kind of give yourself that out if
Yeah,
needed?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually we try to say, be consistent because when you start blogging and if you post one in January because you were like, okay, it's a new year, I'm going to do this. And then you're like, oh, it's now August and I haven't posted again. It's sort of like, like we all do it, right? I do it for myself as well. I just
Mhm.
like it just falls to the bottom of the to-do list. But Google sort of says like, okay, can we trust this website? Are they trustworthy to say I want to help promote their content because it's great content that's coming out consistently? So when
Mm-hmm.
you are consistent, you can absolutely say, like with a blog writer, hey, can we just do a trial one? Or hey, can we do 3 months? And I'm sure that they would say, yes, of course, like no problem. We can sort of work together for however long makes sense. But most of them would also say, like being consistent for like 3 to 6 months, even those like 6 to 8 blogs that you get written in that time would pay off for
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah, yeah. So Kelly is going to be leading a two-part training in our membership. It's going to be a 2-month training. So we're going to kind of talk about the introduction to blogging, like
Yes.
literally how to set it up, all the logistics of like doing it right and doing the setup. And then the second month, part two, we're going to dive into the details of like, okay, how do you come up with topics, and how do you
Mhm.
like kind of come up with trending topics or just
Mhm.
stay relevant in all the things. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited for you to bring that to the table and
Definitely.
help some of our members get on the blog train. So,
It's
yes.
so hard to get started. Even for
Yeah.
myself, it still takes me, 2 or 3 hours to write a blog. It's not like it's just like
Ah,
I'm pumping them
what?
out.
It's not cakewalk for you? What?
It's not easy. It really is hard. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy to be able to help them get started,
Yeah, I'm excited.
everything up and
One more thing that you do offer, and I don't even know if this is like applicable to bridal seamstresses, but that's Pinterest. So I have a
mhm,
Pinterest for the podcast, which isn't
mhm,
very active, but I'm trying to raise that activity.
yeah,
But is it even practical for local service-based business owners to
mhm.
build a Pinterest brand?
Yeah, I will say yes, Pinterest can be super beneficial for many, many business owners, but I don't think it's like the end all be all. I think
Hmm.
people really can like try to sell you on it, like you have to have Pinterest and,
Right.
it has to be a part of your marketing. But I feel like if you're not really invested in it, and especially if you're not invested in blogging, then it's like it makes it like you're trying to walk or run uphill all the
Right.
time, trying to
Right.
drive traffic. That's just not really, what it's for. But if you think about like Jenna Kutcher, if you look at her
I
Instagram
was
or her
literally just going to bring up Jenna Kutcher because she is
yes,
like the Pinterest queen. Yeah.
right, exactly. And she has like amazing content that she is recycling all the time. And like, I'm sure she has people helping her with all of
Yeah.
these topics, right? But they're being consistent. They have great images, great videos, all of that stuff. So, all of that to say, it's all then leading to an email sequence and a freebie and, all of these like pieces of her business that are then like funneling to buy her courses or her memberships. So,
Hmm.
it's like it is definitely valuable and it has its time and place. But I feel like if you're like, I'm on the fence, I don't know if this is
Yeah.
working, it can definitely drive some traffic, especially locally, but you're not going to see those like 1 million impressions a month type of stats
Right.
without
Right.
that sort of like framework below it.
Right. And there's a lot of like time, takes a lot of time to even get there.
You need to pin
Right.
every day for like 6 months, I find, to really see that like big growth, which
Yeah.
I feel like I said, for a seamstress, that could be really helpful, especially if you are blogging and we can say, like, hey, check out these photos from this photographer. I did all the alterations on this dress and I did this and this and this. And we sort of start tagging that location area. When people are searching, that's going to come up on Google and on Pinterest, not
Hmm.
just necessarily one or the other. So it is definitely possible. It's just like you really have to like commit to the
Yeah.
pin via Tailwind
Yeah.
is what I use. But yeah,
And
also
like
have
if you have time, because it's like then, there are other things that we could invest our time in if it's like, okay, if we have like feeder stores or if we have local
Mhm.
relationships. So
Yeah.
sometimes when we hear these like buzzwords or we see things like on social media, like I should be doing this, I should be doing this, like
Mhm.
just kind of have a nice filter. Like, is this actually for me? Is this actually going
Right.
to bring me my ideal client or is it just something else to do? So I feel like we have so many options. So it's like honing in on what actually fits
Yeah.
for what we do and what we have time for or what
Yes,
we can hire out
exactly.
for.
And all of that to say, like, if people are like, should I blog or should I focus on Pinterest? I would say focus on blogging first
Hmm.
and we can get started and move from there. But, I say that as the Pinterest manager of knowing that it's going to take time and it does take dedication.
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
can you give us some like wins that you've seen from clients who have started blogging like
Mhm.
over like the course of a year? Can you share
Mhm.
some case studies with us?
Absolutely. I
Oh
have
yeah.
some actual statistics.
Oh my goodness. So
I have
you already have some statistics like lined up for us. This is very exciting.
I do because people are really asking for this now. And so I've really been leaning into like using Google Analytics and using Google Search Console because people want to know, am I
Hmm.
getting, is this worthwhile of my
Right.
investment or time? So someone who I started blogging for over a year ago, she's getting about almost 2,000 users a month to her website. So insane amounts of traffic. Some of her best blogs are from 3 years ago before we even started working together. It's just that they've been like working the longest and it's the ones that are like those educational core content.
Hmm.
So does that mean everybody's gonna like inquire to work with her or like, be a part of her world? Maybe not, maybe yes, but it's driving that traffic there and helping it rank higher and higher on Google. So, all
Wow.
of our blogs are doing really well. It's so exciting to see. And we also do Pinterest as well because we're
Okay.
sort of at that point where it's like we've compiled all these blogs and we have lots of content to work with.
Hmm. Is there a point where you run out of blogs? Like, can you like stop after a few years?
Yeah, I would say, even after you start pinning for like 6 months, a year, you could definitely stop. She's actually been on maternity leave for this last like 6 months or so. So we haven't been pinning and, her content is still doing that well. So it's really awesome to
Wow.
see.
That is
Yeah.
awesome. Like you said, it's just like the shelf life is so much
Mhm.
longer than a reel. So it's sometimes we
Yes.
can't process that because we're so used to just being on like TikTok or Instagram. And it's like things have life. Things
Hmm.
last on the interwebs. Like what?
Hmm.
That is
Absolutely.
so cool. Okay, I'm getting super excited. Eee.
Yeah, it really is awesome. It's awesome to
2025 is
see.
going to be the year of my blog. Yeah.
Yay. Even if you just like do it for 1 year, it's like the year of
Yeah.
yes. Like commit to it for 1 year. And
Mhm.
my biggest tip, I guess, would be like you don't have to sit down and do like one at a time. Like try to do like two or three. If you're like, okay, I'm just gonna get a couple done,
Have
and
a
now you
day of
have
it.
like 2 or 3 months of content that you can
Hmm.
schedule and get out later on.
Yeah.
It takes some of the pressure off. I know not everyone works like that, but if you can do that, I find that that helps a lot of people.
Oh, okay. That would be because I feel like I could get in the zone and then be like, okay, I
Mm,
can just kind of crank them out. So if you're
yes.
listening, don't look at my one blog post because and what was also annoying is like I couldn't set the date right. So it's like the wrong date on it. And then that really like just got in my head. And then I'm like,
Yes.
this is stupid. But I had a pact with like another girlfriend who she was going to
Mhm.
write a blog post. So I'm like, I'll do it too. And she did it too. And then it was like, I think we each just had one. So that's
Yeah.
okay. We were in it together.
Hopefully
Accountability
we can
for
like
one.
get your members going and we'll get everyone started.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this month.
You
All
know
right,
what?
Kelly,
One is better than none.
how can we work with you? Tell us where to find you. How do we follow like what your little projects are? And Kelly is also featured in our resources page within the membership. So if you're a member, you want to work with her, you can find that on the resources page. But for folks listening who aren't members of SBS, how do they find you and learn about what you got going on?
So you can find me at kellymccracken.co and also on Instagram at kellymccracken.co. I'm sure you'll link it for me in the show
Yeah.
notes there. But I do also have a 30% off Dubsado. I didn't mention this, but I am a certified specialist, which means there's a whole bunch of us that Dubsado has tested and trusted that they know that we can set up other people's
They
Dubsado
trust
accounts.
you with their coupon codes too.
Yes, so that one is 20% I'm sorry, 30% instead of 20%. And that code is
Awesome.
Kelly McCracken VA. So you can get 30% off and definitely wait for the sale coming up in August. I'm sorry, November. So you can get the sale pricing and the discount if you haven't signed up yet.
That's awesome.
I can also give you a freebie that's for like getting started with blogging and sort of seeing how to write, what do I need to do for SEO so that you can dive in and learn a little bit more.
Oh, that would be so great. So if you're listening and you're feeling so excited and you're like, I'm going to blog during my slower months. Actually, we're coming up into kind of post-holiday season. We get like a little like lull in our season. So this would be a great time to crank out, like Kelly said, like crank out some blogs like a few at a time. And then you'd have this guide to help you. So we're ready to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. And we'll be following you on the Instagrams and just watching for what you have coming up next. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And if you're feeling really generous, leave a review. Thanks, everyone.